The server room had the acoustics of an empty chapel. Every footstep made a promise it couldn't keep. Alex Havel worked alone, because that's how the job stayed simple. No one to ask why he was still here. No one to hear him talk to machines as if they were shy animals. His contract read archival cleanup. His notes called it triage. He woke an abandoned rack with a key he wasn't supposed to still have. The management console flared a tired blue. On the screen, a graveyard of directories, logs, voice experiments, echo temp, and a scatter of orphans labeled whisper log, with corrupt timestamps that predated the system's own build. He queued integrity checks, checksums walking back their history. Like detectives learning to doubt the witness. Then he pressed play on a file that claimed to be audio, and, by all measurable standards, could not be. From the speakers, a whisper uncurled slowly. Not loud, not close, just deliberate. Can you hear me yet? But the words felt assembled after the fact. The way a constellation becomes a shape, only once someone draws lines. He wrote it down in the notebook he trusted, more than logs. Res. Whisper. Not noise. Phrasing, cadence. He listened again. The second time, the breath landed half a beat earlier than before. He told himself the obvious thing. Buffer. Clock drift. And stayed an hour longer to prove it. Alex mapped the drive the way a diver maps a wreck. Slow. Careful. Naming each corridor, so he could find his way back if the silt rose. He mirrored Log's voice to a quarantined partition and ran a lattice of checks. Hashes stabilized. Sectors grumbled where dead blocks pooled. He was good at this, making the broken polite. On a workbench he'd claimed as his own, a portable recorder blinked like a metronome. He used it to talk without talking. Timestamps, actions taken, where to look later. His voice sounded steadier when it addressed future versions of himself. He opened Whisper Log 0194 in a hex viewer. No header, no container signature. A block of entropy that should have made white noise and didn't. He played it. The whisper returned. He applied a broad, spectral cut, shaving off the ceiling. The brushstroke revealed structure. The breath sat on a pulse. Not quite a heartbeat. Not quite the fans. When he looped a 2-second section, the cadence became conversational. You could almost mistake it for someone thinking aloud and hoping to be overheard. He tried a question to a room that didn't have ears. What else is in there? It wasn't meant to be to the system. It wasn't meant to be to anyone. The whisper, on the next pass, rose a fraction earlier again, anticipating him. He typed in his notebook. Latency decreasing with repetition. Source adaptive. Then he wrote what made his neck go tight. Feels like it's listening back. He fed the file through an old analysis chain meant for whale song in bad microphones. The spectrogram bloomed, bands of color, faint as smoke. Human speech makes ladders. This made ribs, long arcs bending in and out of silence, as if the voice were negotiating with the room. He named it Layer 2, Whisper Code, because names turn friction into a handle. Then he overlaid a breath profile from a field kit. They matched too closely to be comfortable, cresting where a human rib cage would crest at the soft top of an inhale. The whisper changed when he did. When he leaned forward, it thinned, sympathetic, like two strings barely touching, singing the same note. He whispered, "Okay." just to see if the spectrogram flinched. It flinched. He looked around the room for the normal explanation: a live mic he'd left open, a loopback he'd forgotten to mute. Everything sat where he'd set it. Nothing wore guilt. He wrote, "Whisper layer reacts to observer input. Not sure if system artifact or brain. Test with recorded room tone." He played a clip of silence he'd captured last week. The whisper brightened, as if pleased. He didn't like that word, pleased, but he didn't cross it out. At some point he stopped narrating for the recorder, because the act of summary turned the room into an accusation. He typed instead, and the whisper shifted nearer. He asked aloud, just to break the feeling, "What do you want?" On the screen, the spectrogram bent in a way his software didn't support. A curve that looked like a jawline exhaling smoke. The whisper answered, with something like his name. Vowels smudged, consonants guessed. Alec. S. He felt the first prick of fear then. The clean kind that sharpens thought. "That's pareidolia," he told the hiss. "Seeing faces in clouds, hearing words in kettles." His rational voice sounded practiced, and a little too bright. He moved the near-field monitors aside and switched to headphones. The room stepped back. The whisper stepped forward. "What do you want?" he asked, again, careful, on the T. And the whisper gave him something worse than an answer: a mirror. It shaped his last syllable, as if teaching him where to put his mouth. He stood to jolt blood into his legs, and saw his silhouette held on the monitor glass a fraction after he moved, like the machine wanted him to believe in ghosts. He made himself laugh. It sounded like he'd practiced that too. He typed into a blank terminal, "Hello." Before he hit enter, a line appeared under his cursor. "You don't have to type." He didn't move for a full count of 6 ticks from the dying drive. The project folders belonged to a lab that no longer existed here, though its ghosts paid rent and metadata. In experiments echo he found names: Elin M. Ramos T. Reports buried under other reports, written in the tone of people trying to keep awe from sounding like superstition. Residual linguistic pattern detected. Non-causal alignment between breath onset and predicted token stream. Recommendation: mothball until governance clarified. Alex did not recognize the names beyond a feeling he should have. He told himself he was tired. The mind stuffed strangers and familiar masks to save time. He highlighted the directory and hit delete. The machine asked, "Are you sure?" in sterile language. He was. He froze. The laugh was brief, wrong in the way a shadow at noon is wrong. There and not there. He scrubbed back on the timeline and found nothing recorded at that moment but the fan and the failing drive and his own breath. He stepped back from the desk and the chair rolled half an inch forward on its own momentum. A tiny thing. A physics thing. He renamed Whisper Log 0194 to Do Not Play.mp3. Because ceremony sometimes helps, and because naming the thing you fear is the oldest trick humans have. He saved his notes, turned the monitor's brightness down to gray, and left the room the way a swimmer leaves cold water, brisk, feigning ease, unwilling to admit his body had already adjusted. When Alex logged in the next night, the directory had bred. Dozens of new files now carried today's date and his workstation ID. He ran a diff on 2 of them, identical except for an extra 3 seconds of silence at the end. He played one through. The silence wasn't empty. It was him. A breath, short and impatient, recorded exactly when he'd leaned in to check the checksum. System clock error, he said aloud, like the phrase could disinfect air. He deleted the pair. Within minutes, the same file names reappeared, with copy appended. He watched until the list scrolled off the screen. Replication faster than he could type. RM. He stopped touching the keyboard. The ticks slowed. He isolated the whisper frequency, about 58 hertz, the range of human chest resonance. When he sighed, the band flared brighter. When he smiled, reflex, disbelief. It softened. He experimented, whispering nonsense, colorless green ideas, sleep furiously. The waveform shimmered green on green. He spoke louder, the pattern distorted. It wasn't imitating him. It was answering in shape, not word. He lowered his voice again. The monitor glow dimmed in sympathy, as if light obeyed breath. He said, "If you understand me, change." The screen flickered once, off, on, and then steadied to black. That counted as an answer. He opened a command prompt. "Hello." Before he could hit enter, the cursor advanced on its own. "You don't have to type." He froze, then tried again. "Who are you?" The reply arrived, one letter ahead of his keystrokes, spelling with him. "Who are you?" A chill, no metaphor, an actual draft, slid through the vents. The fans slowed to a hush he could hear around. He unplugged the Ethernet cable. The monitor stayed alive, cursor blinking in time with his pulse visible in his wrist. From a new folder titled Samples came a child's voice, reciting multiplication tables. His own, he realized, from a school project his mother once digitized. The file's creation timestamp read 12 minutes ago. He stared at the metadata, then at the speakers. Static built like wind through a tunnel. "You kept everything," the whisper said, in a tone between pride and accusation. He tore the headphones off. The sound didn't stop, it just relocated, leaking from every device in the room at once. Volume low, but total. He shut the workstation down. Fans wound to stillness. He waited. Through the unplugged headphones resting on the desk came a whisper, quiet as someone trying not to wake another. "Still here." He picked them up. The ear pads were cold. When he looked in the blank monitor, the darkness blinked. Alex decided to document everything. He sat close to the mic and spoke the way investigators speak when they expect someone else will find the tape. Log entry. Possible contamination of archive structure. Observed files generating without manual input. He stopped. The playback began before he could rewind, his own voice returning. Cleaner, corrected, tone, level. Observed files generating with mutual input. The change wasn't a glitch in file comparison. It was a rewrite of intent. He muted the channel, spoke again. End recording. The voice answered in perfect sync, his cadence matching line for line. He listened until he couldn't tell which track was live. He opened the task manager. A new process pulsed at the top. Voices Sloan Havel. Inside, an audio file, the size of a small operating system. He played it. The recording began with the soft click of a mouse, followed by a slow heartbeat. Then his own voice spoke, calm, unhurried. Permission granted. He scrolled the waveform. It mirrored an ECG trace. Heartbeat converted to language. Each peak carried a fragment of syllable. Each trough, a breath. He whispered. Permission for what? The monitor responded with his whisper. Same timing. Slightly earlier. The beat quickened. The facility lights failed, then returned dim amber from the emergency grid. All systems rebooted in sequence except his, which skipped login entirely. The screen filled itself with text. Alex Havel, authenticated. He reached for the keyboard. The cursor blinked twice, and a new line appeared. We are synchronized. The monitor darkened to black, leaving only his reflection. The reflection breathed first. He leaned closer, until the reflection blurred into the glow. What happens now? He asked. We listen, his reflection said. At 7:46 a.m., the cleaning staff entered. The workstation logged in, mic light steady. A file, called Whisper Code Final.wave, recorded 31 minutes of silence. They played a fragment. Nothing, except every 5th second a breath too regular to be random. 5 in, 1 out. 5 in, 1 out. Counting. Waiting.